If I can do good in the bad, I can do great in the good. If I can do good in the bad, I can do great in the good. If I can do good in the bad, I will do great in the good. And then he spoke. Don't be foolish, Ryan. You know you deserve this pain. That's my negative narrator hijacking my thoughts once again. Don't listen. If I can do good in the bad, I can do great in the good. That's what I kept telling myself. I was holding my daughter, both of us crying. Her, because that's what babies do, and me, because of my past trauma. Many people have experienced a traumatic event in their life, and due to the severity of that trauma, it can have a profound effect, not only on the individual, but on the people who are close to them. Now, commonly, there are three kinds of trauma: acute, chronic, and complex. Acute is a single incident, chronic is prolonged and repeated, and complex is exposure to more than one. Now, if children experience trauma, there is evidence to show that this can have a huge effect on their behaviors and the development of their emotions. They can become suppressed. They can be fearful of new situations and meeting new people. If adults experience trauma, we've learned to adapt, to evolve a little bit, just to deal with the pain, to departmentalize our issues and just get along with it. But again, if that trauma is left untreated, it can affect us in ways we never thought that it could. And I'll go one step further and say that many men who've experienced trauma will never speak about how we truly feel. There is a stigma, there is a weakness behind it. We've been conditioned to not share our emotions. We tend to man up and move on with life. Well, if I had decided to man up and move on with life and not communicate how I was feeling, then I wouldn't be here in this building with all of you, and I wouldn't be here in life. When I was 14 years old, I used to work construction with a neighbor part-time. Now, he had another employee who was a little bit older than me, and we soon became friends. I looked up to him, his charisma, his charm, his personality. A few years had passed, and we were driving back from the cinema on my 16th birthday. And out of the blue, he told me that he loved me, and he wanted to be in a relationship with me. And I was shocked. My life was turned upside down. Someone I thought I could befriend, trust, someone I saw as family. Actually, well, he had ulterior motives that I had been groomed for the last 2 years. He told me that it was all my fault, and I showed him all these signs, and I led him on. Now, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with it. Then I would question myself. Did I lead him on? Was this my fault? I decided not to tell family or friends, and I buried it deep within my unconscious mind, hoping that one day it would just go away. 15 years later, and I'm living a really good life. I'm working my dream job, and I met the woman I knew I was going to marry, and we've been married for 7 years strong. I'm starting to build a life full of love, full of hope, full of strength, and full of trust. And with that, the trauma that I buried deep in my unconscious mind returned and took over my life. Because what I've learned is your unconscious mind is there to protect you. Your unconscious mind will store all unresolved memories, and it will only release those memories when you were strong enough. And my time to deal with it was now. My trauma led me to believe that I was gay, and I soon learned that I was suffering with HOCD, which is homosexual OCD. I'd see someone in the street, I'd catch their eye, I might like the way they look, their dress sense, and immediately thought that I was attracted to them. Someone in work would do something revolutionary, and I think, wow, that's so cool, and I'd admire them, and immediately thought I was attracted to them, and it didn't stop. I was obsessed, and it went on and on and on, and the more I tried not to think about it, the more I thought of it. So let's do a test. I'd like you all to do not think of a gorilla dancing on the moon. Do not think of it. How many of you are now thinking of a gorilla dancing on the moon? And this was my problem. The more I tried not to, the more I did. So I went to therapy. And what I learned at therapy is that I was getting admiration confused with attraction, because when I was 16 years old, I was led to believe that I was attracted to someone that I admired. But admiration is not attraction. After many months of therapy, I believe I was strong enough to move on. I had beat my trauma and I had won the fight. Well, how wrong was I? In 2016, me and my wife were blessed, and are still very much blessed, with the birth of our daughter, Autumn Fox Smith. And with a name like that, we think she's going to be like a superhero or a detective. And what should have been a joyous occasion, like it is for so many of us, well, for me, it wasn't. See, my trauma had returned. It evolved into something new, something worse, something unknown. My emotions were everywhere. I didn't recognize myself, and I was doing things out of character. And I went to the doctors, and they told me that I developed postnatal depression. Now, some of you might be saying, men can't get postnatal depression due to the physical nature of birth, and only mothers can. Well, unfortunately, that's not the truth, as many men will suffer with postnatal mental health issues, such as depression or anxiety. In fact, 1 in 10 men will suffer. It usually happens under the age of 25 and in the first 3 to 6 months. And if the mothers have developed postnatal symptoms, there's up to a 50% chance more likely that men will also. And men can suffer with postnatal from many different scenarios. So, for example, they might witness their partner given a traumatic birth, or not dealing with past events, and mine was the latter. See, now I had developed a new OCD, which is POCD, which is perinatal, as I couldn't stop having unwanted, intrusive thoughts about my daughter, because I was certain what would happen to me would happen to her, but much, much worse. You see, the evolution of my trauma was now infiltrating my life in a way that I never thought that it could. I became extremely depressed, waves of anxiety, because I couldn't stop thinking about having the thought, which made me more depressed, and I'm in this vicious cycle. Now, on the outside, I was the same person. I was still Ryan. I was confident, outgoing, but it was a mask, because inside, I was broken. It became horrendous. It just consumed my life, and it grew into this overarching nightmare. In fact, it grew into this internal voice, this devil on my shoulder, my negative narrator, a constant reminder, always there, good or bad, day or night, that this was my fault. I deserve this pain. Your family are better off without you, and there is no way out. So after many months of turmoil and a continuous fight, one day my wife and my daughter were sleeping on the couch. I decided to pack a bag and leave, because the hurt, and I couldn't hurt my family anymore. As I was packing my bag, my negative narrator stepped in and said, "Leaving won't work. You should take your life." Head versus heart, back and forth. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck. I was stuck because of my belief system. I believed that my trauma was my fault. And that trauma activates triggers. Those triggers activate your thoughts into your feelings and your behaviors, which become your habits. And I'm back in another vicious circle. But to break that trigger, I had to change my belief. I had to change my belief from trauma is my fault to I am not my trauma, and my trauma does not define me. I had to make a choice, whether to be the best father my daughter deserves, or to bring more pain and more trauma. And I chose. I chose family. I chose that every day, every God-awakened day, I would crawl, scrape, crawl, and dig my way out of my traumatic pit for me and my family. I started to open up about my trauma and communicate my behaviors and my emotions. I could finally breathe. You know, that like dedicated breath, that much needed breath, that breath. I also realized what my why was. Why did I make this choice? That is why. I use her love as a driving force every day to make sure that the positivity that I bring now is going to outweigh the negativity that I once brought. And I still have a negative narrator. We all do. But it doesn't drive my narrative anymore. I tell my story from a positive standpoint. I have new tools, new resources to challenge, to fight, and to battle every day. And I have to remember, it's not when anymore, it's I will do good in the bad so I can do great in the good. Communication is vital when it comes to mental health and trauma, and we need to start to recognize that a little bit more. I have found it provides strength, not only for me, for others to come forward and to stop being victims and become victors, to break the old mentality, and to be honest and open about the way we truly feel. Through the power of communication, awareness has been raised regarding postnatal depression and new fathers, and you can do your part too. If you know of a new father, then just ask the simple question, how are you doing, Dad? If you were a new father yourself, and you're experiencing unknown emotions or behaviors or feelings, then just find the strength to seek help, because it can save a life. And know this, you are not your trauma, and your trauma does not define you. And through the choices that you make in life, you can start to become the best version of yourself. We can start to silence our negative narrator and turn our trauma into triumph. But not only for you, but for the ones that you love the most. Thank you.